Chapter 39. Desmond stood outside a door in one of the outlying taverns. He crumpled the note in his fist and lifted his hand to knock, but hesitated. The clamour grew downstairs. As the afternoon turned into evening, the tavern got busier and noisier. Merchants and drifters mixed below with the locals, swapping rumours and stories. They wouldn't pay any heed to a foreigner, would they? He gripped the doorknob and twisted. He took a deep breath, trying to quiet his thudding heart, and swung open the door. The light from the narrow corridor spilled into the darkened room and chased the shadows into the corners. "Come in, you fool," a female voice hissed. He darted inside and closed the door. Darkness swallowed him whole. He held his breath, his pulse drumming in his ears. "Yatako itaesa," the voice whispered, and the room was bathed in a dim, yellow glow. A woman cloaked in shadows sat at the edge of a bed, her hood hiding her face. Shadows hid most of the sparse furnishings, but didn't reveal any bags. The woman travelled light and without an escort. "You're late." She pulled her hood back, and coppery red curls cascaded down her shoulders and back. "Sameen," Desmond swallowed. "How did you? What are you doing here?" The sorceress smiled. "How did you like my little welcoming party at Azure?" "That was your doing? You almost got me killed." "I figured you could handle a few toggle." "A few? Try a couple hundred or so," Desmond scowled. "What brings you all the way to Bonzapur?" "Change of plans, my pet. You see, I've discovered something very important, and I need you to secure it for me." "Oh?" Desmond crossed his arms and studied her painted face. She stood and untied her cloak. "I want you to bring Prince Vian to Gwydion unharmed." Desmond thumbed the crushed parchment in his fist. "What do you want with him?" "That is my business, pet." Sameen draped the cloak over the side of the bed. Her black dress barely held her generous chest. The silky fabric flowed over her hips and brushed the tips of her boots as she glided toward him. "Unless, of course, you have changed your mind." Her green eyes rooted him to the floor. He shook his head, but kept his gaze on the advancing woman. "Do you have the dagger?" "Not yet." "Why not?" Sameen drew closer. Desmond lowered his arms and took a step back. "I've been a little preoccupied." "Preoccupied? With a woman of impure bloodlines? I do not believe you would prefer her over me." Sameen cocked her head and ran her gloved hand along his tunic. Desmond's breath caught. The scent of muskroot hung in his nose, reminding him of the temple's incense, and when he had first met her. His faithful pilgrimages to Gwydion had rewarded him generously, but he was no fool. "Yes, unbelievable as it may seem," she circled him, "she is a descendant of the elven lord Delorian. His duty was to guard the dagger and his sons after him. But the dagger has been lost. For 30 years I have searched everywhere for the dagger. Its presence evades me." She faced him again. "I had hoped you would have had something for me by now. She must know something." "She claims to know nothing, but I'm gaining her trust." "Trust?" Sameen's dark eyebrows arched. "This is not the time for wooing games. The goddess demands retribution, and if you cannot fill this request, I will find another." "No, may the goddess live free." Desmond raised his right hand. "I have other information. For one, she bears a harpy curse." Sameen cocked her head and her gaze grew distant. "That is interesting." She refocused her attention on him. "What else?" "A message her dying father gave her to give her brother." He took a breath. "He said, 'The sun has set. The morning star is forever locked in stone.'" A smile brightened Sameen's face and her eyes shone. "I love riddles." "Thank you, pet. You've been most helpful." Her mother wasn't as useful, but she did have this. She slipped something from a pouch and held out her gloved hand. A polished black marble the size of a small egg sat in her palm. Take it. It will glow if it nears an object the Toaz de Cone has touched. He took it and slid it into the leather pouch at his waist. What about this silly quest? Put an end to it any way you like, but make it look natural. We don't need the Nevins getting wind of our plans. We'll let them think it's going fine, and then when the time is right, they'll discover their failure. She rubbed her arms. And bring the girl if you like. I might have use for her. Desmond frowned. Why would the sorceress want her now? Ayianna was his. Unless Sameen made him a high priest. Not that he wanted to be a priest, but what was a title when he had the sorceress? But how did Vian fit into all this? He slowly nodded. I will see to it. I know you will, my pet. That is why I chose you. She peeled off her gloves and revealed heavily scarred arms. He flinched. Do my arms bother you? No. Sameen smiled and pulled the silver dragon pendant from her neck. Blow on this pendant when you are ready to return to me. I have 2 dragons and a handful of imps prepared to assist you. But I must warn you, if you tarry, the imps will get a little impatient. She slipped the satin cord around his neck and lingered, her face close to his. He stared into her green eyes, unable to breathe. She withdrew and ran her finger along his temple. A rush of desire slammed into him. The goddess desires vows to be consummated as tradition dictates. Finally, he tried to calm his racing heart, afraid she'd see him trembling, but it didn't matter now, did it? He smiled. Let's not disappoint the goddess. She pulled him closer, and he lifted her chin. He caught sight of the black spider inked into her skin. A vein pulsated beneath its red-dotted abdomen. There was no going back, no turning round. Tonight, the sorceress belonged to him. Together, she whispered and kissed him, we shall free the goddess from the tyranny of the underworld. Desmond wrapped his arms around her. Fire burned in his veins, a desire too strong to deny. This was how it was supposed to be, him and the sorceress forever. Yusath Taesa, and the room succumbed to darkness once again.